All right, today we're jumping into pragmatism. It's this uniquely American philosophy that basically says an idea is only as good as its practical use. So what does it actually mean to be pragmatic?
You've definitely heard someone called pragmatic, right? It means they're sensible, they're focused on what works. But that everyday word comes from this really deep and honestly game-changing philosophical tradition. It's one that challenges our whole idea of truth, belief, and even reality itself.
So at its heart, pragmatism sees our ideas as tools. It's not so much worried about whether an idea is a perfect, flawless mirror of reality. It's much more interested in what that idea lets us do. Is it a good tool for solving a problem? Does it help us get around in the world? That's the test.
Okay, let's really dig into this central concept, the idea that ideas are tools for action.
Think about it this way. If you have two beliefs, and they both lead to the exact same consequences in the real world, well, a pragmatist would say the difference between them doesn't really matter. What matters, what's crucial, is the actual tangible effect an idea has on our experience.
So where did this whole way of thinking even come from? Well, it's deeply American. It was born in the years right after the Civil War, a time of massive change, huge innovation, where practical solutions were suddenly valued way more than old, rigid dogmas.
It all started around 1870 in Cambridge, Massachusetts. There was this informal little group called the Metaphysical Club, and over the next couple of decades, their private conversations started to become published works, which set the stage for a major new philosophical movement that just perfectly captured the spirit of the nation at the time.
And this is so important because it highlights that this wasn't a philosophy cooked up by one guy in an ivory tower. It was collaborative. You had thinkers like John Dewey and George Herbert Mead over in the Chicago Club, and they were building on these ideas, pushing them into education, sociology, psychology, all over the place.
This right here, this is the bedrock of the whole thing. It's called the pragmatic maxim, and it comes from the movement's founder, Charles Sanders Peirce. What he's really saying is that the meaning of any idea is just the sum of its practical consequences. If there are no consequences, then the idea is, for all intents and purposes, meaningless.
But the guy who really took pragmatism and brought it to the world, that was William James. He was just a brilliant writer and a powerhouse thinker. He took Peirce's really complex ideas and made them accessible, sparking this huge wave of interest that eventually spread across the entire globe.
Okay, so now we've got to tackle the most controversial, most misunderstood part of pragmatism, what it says about truth.
So this brings us to a huge caricature of pragmatism. William James once talked about truth's cash value, and his critics just pounced on that. They claimed it meant truth is just whatever's convenient for you, or whatever makes you feel good. But that is a massive oversimplification. The reality is way more demanding. For a pragmatist, a belief works if it holds up over the long haul. It has to be consistent with other facts we know. It has to help us make accurate predictions, and it has to successfully guide what we do. Believing a lie might feel good for a minute, but it's not useful and therefore not true because it just doesn't line up with the facts of the world.
These four ideas are basically the pillars of how a pragmatist sees the world. First up, fallibilism, the idea that, hey, we could be wrong about pretty much anything. We're human. But at the same time, they're anti-skeptical. They believe we can still get to the truth through investigation. For them, that inquiry always starts with a real-world problem, not just some abstract what if. And finally, they embrace pluralism, the idea that there can be many different, valid ways of looking at the world.
And this wasn't just some abstract theory for philosophers to argue about, no way. Pragmatism had, and it still has, this massive real-world impact everywhere from schools to courtrooms.
I mean, you've got John Dewey completely revolutionizing education, saying school isn't just preparing for life, it is life. You've got Oliver Wendell Holmes Jr. totally transforming American law. And then there's the social reformer Jane Addams, a giant in both pragmatism and feminism, who showed how these ideas could be a real engine for social change.
You can just see how incredibly broad the philosophy's reach is. Its focus on experience, on solving actual problems, and on accepting different viewpoints. Well, it gave thinkers in all sorts of fields a really powerful new way to work. So, okay, it's been about 150 years. Why should we still care about pragmatism today?
Here it is. This is the core takeaway. Pragmatism asks you to be an experimenter with your own beliefs. Don't just collect them like possessions. Test them. See how they actually work in your life and in the world. Are they good tools? Do they lead to better outcomes? And this idea scales up to, well, all of society. James saw that society itself runs on a kind of pragmatic faith. We trust that other drivers will stop at a red light. We trust that the bank actually has our money. It's not based on some absolute certainty. It's a working hypothesis that, allows us to all function together.
And that leaves us with one final question, really a challenge for you. Pragmatism brings philosophy down from the clouds and right into your daily life. It challenges you to ask, what do my beliefs actually do? What impact do they have on how I act, on my community, on my world? Because the answer to that question, a pragmatist would say, is the truest measure of what your beliefs really mean.